Welcome back to the channel. Just wanted to give a quick update as we close out the year. Here's the Dow ETF. So what's happened here, as you can see, been down all year until October, and since then the Dow's made a higher higher than back in August here, so that's a good sign. As of right now, we've seen some downward momentum into December, but possibly bounced a little bit off the 200-day moving average, and it's still up in the air, I think, whether we go higher from here into next year or reverse to the downside. As you can see, there's been a little bit of a bounce off the 200-day, and statistically we should be going up into mid-January, so that's what I'd be looking for. But something that does concern me, and this is a ratio I like to look at, is the SPX over the volatility index. It generally makes a reversal on the downside every 3 months or so, and it looks like the next one would be about mid-January, and I suppose this could invert. So instead of making a low, it could make a high and then come down into the beginning of March. And that's one scenario we could be looking for. Or this alternatively just could go straight down and we could see a spike down into January, which would be consistent with the lows hit here, and here. And it's kind of appearing that maybe that might be in the cards, as we have this momentum still heading downwards. So that's one thing to look out for. I mentioned this in a post about a week ago, that if we're seeing this downward momentum here in the SPX to VIX ratio, that we might be in for more downside, despite some of my models, actually all of my models, statistically saying we're going to have a strong start to the year. So that's one thing I'm looking out for as well. So this ratio right here is so VUG is a Vanguard ETF, a large cap growth ETF, and VTV is the value, similar. So basically it would be like the NASDAQ over the Dow. I like to look at this ratio as well. As you can see, it started heading downwards, so value has been outperforming growth since November of 2021, when the Fed announced that they were going to be raising interest rates, which shouldn't surprise anybody. But it's been down this whole year. Looks like we had a bear market rally in May, and then down since then. I suppose heading into next year, at the end of the year, it might be a time for a reversal, but at this point I see no confirmation of that. So you do have a positive divergence down here in the momentum, but I wouldn't be looking for that to reverse. So I would be looking for value to outperform to start the year. So IJS over VTV. This ratio is small cap value over large cap value. As you can see, this has been going down since March 2021. Basically this is a risk-on signal. When small caps are outperforming large caps, that's a clear indication of risk-on macro environment. And that's, if you remember from back in those days, that's when all this easy money kind of started to stop from the whole COVID pandemic. So small caps have been underperforming since then. I don't see any reversal in sight for this either. So I would be betting at this point on large cap value outperforming into the new year. So if we were to see a rotation from value back into growth, you would see it first on the 10-year Treasury note yield. This is clearly in an uptrend, and I see no momentum of reversing to the downside at all. If we were to see a rotation back into growth, you would have to see it here on the interest rates first. We would, in order for growth to outperform, this needs to be heading downwards, and it's not looking like that's happening anytime soon. So the DXY, clearly in a downtrend going into the end of the year. It looks to me like it'll probably want to test the trend line from the previous highs. I think we'd be looking for a bounce right here into maybe late January, February. I think at that point we will probably see a test of this high. I think it'll tell us a lot whether that's a higher high or a lower high. But then I think we head back down towards a low over here around 2024. So one ETF that I'm keeping an eye on is this Alerian MLP ETF. So this is an ETF comprised of a lot of the master limited partnerships in the oil and gas sector, mainly the pipeline companies with big juicy dividends. It looks to me like we hit the trend line here, and we're actually starting to turn up on the momentum. I would be expecting this to float into about mid-January or so, up to about this trend line. So I'd be looking at a target right here. So another indicator I use for the overall market is Eversource Energy. They're a utility company here in New England, and as you can see, they've been ranging since the pandemic here, pretty much between 78.26 and 90, and it's been a pretty good indicator of the overall market. As you can see, it really got hammered from the peaks here in August to October, and of course October was the low for the year. And it's interesting looking at this because it really broke lower out of this channel, but then immediately bounced right back up into the middle of this channel. And I'm really keeping a close eye on this to tell me what's going to happen with the rest of the market. As you can see, it kind of lost momentum up here and started reversing down below. But since then, it's kind of had a pretty decent bounce, and this is one thing to look at here, whether we continue down to the downside and maybe test this channel, or maybe it wants to head this way up to around 90. So whether it does this or that, that will give us an indication of what the rest of the market's going to do as well. And as I mentioned in our 2023 forecast, Bitcoin, I am expecting to see some strength out of it. We do have some momentum increasing to the upside on the weekly time frame, and I think there's a possibility we still could test this 2019 peak here. But overall, I think we're in a pretty decent accumulation zone for 2023. Hopefully, we'll see some upside there. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today, folks. As I mentioned in our forecast, I am expecting a pretty strong start to the new year. I'd be trading this with a pretty tight stop, though, because we do have that SPX over VIX ratio turning down. But there are some opportunities in the market. Maybe that MLP ETF, that could be a good sign. So we'll keep an eye on it, and have a happy new year, and we'll see you guys in 2023.